Welcome back to the Saved Artist podcast. Today we actually have one of my good friends, Mario Galeano, a musician, graphic designer, and professional fundraiser for a creative agency by the name the Better Fundraising Co. He currently serves at his local church, Restored LA, and has designed for multiple churches, businesses, and nonprofits. Welcome, Mario.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. We've known each other for quite some time.
Yeah, a long time. Yeah.
A very long time. Actually, the first story I remember of you is you were playing piano and I was playing bass or something. And you probably know the story a little bit better than I do. I kind of blur that from my mind. I don't want to remember, unfortunately, just because, you know.
I have no clue what you're talking about.
Yeah, right. We've known each other for a long time. And thank you for being here. We really appreciate you.
We're excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm just excited. Like this podcast, I've been following along. I subscribed, that first day. Just like amazing the stories I've been hearing and just kind of like, those conversations been super inspiring.
We really appreciate that.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. And I think we can just dive right into it. I know you have a long story, but really, how did you get into this? Like, what was the start of it?
Honestly, it was all accidental. It just happened by chance. And obviously, like looking back now, 2020 vision, like you see God's will and God's hand moving, But honestly, it was accidental. I started volunteering at a nonprofit when I was in college, when I was in CSUN. So I had, I was enrolled. I was double majoring.
What was your major on CSUN?
I was double majoring mathematics and computer science, which is
so
weird, right?
Did you finish?
I didn't. I was literally in my first year. I was still doing a lot of GEDs. I was working on some basic like CSS, Java classes, and then I started volunteering at this little nonprofit, which you're gonna laugh right now at the ties, but it's called Cloud and Fire Ministries, which is they actually occupied this current building that we're in right now.
This building that we're in was actually occupied by Cloud and Fire,
but they're not here anymore.
They're not here anymore. I mean, we're here. So
the Saved Artist podcast.
From what I know, there's multiple stories.
No, so they were actually in this very physical location before. So, but I started volunteering after school tutoring, in my own neighborhood, and really felt like, just led to help people. I think I've always loved helping people. So it just started there. They brought me on part-time, brought me on full-time, and it just kind of progressed from there. And I just kind of fell in love with this idea of using my skills to help people, And so I was hired by them. I moved on from there. I started working at a rescue mission in Long Beach Rescue Mission, and doing just kind of communications work, volunteer work. And then I saw a need. I saw a need for social media. I saw a need for our website. I saw a need for the way we were promoting ourselves to the community. And I think that's where my graphic design side, that creative side kicked in. So.
And how old were you like during this season? Because social media and all that, it's fairly new.
It's fairly new. So this was probably back in I've got to say like 2006, 2007.
Okay, so that was kind of MySpace era, going to Facebook.
YouTube was just starting.
YouTube was just starting.
Mm-hmm. And so obviously I had no clue what I was doing either, because like just had my MySpace account. But really, I think just saw a need to start to organically reach out to people, and so I started making little flyers, for our events. I started making little postcards, started just learning from people around me, and that slowly just progressed, as I went. So I don't have any formal education in what I do, but definitely along the path, there's been so many like key instrumental people that I've learned from and taken from and just soaked up their knowledge to be able to do what I do today.
So it almost sounds like you were like an apprentice, like you were getting a mentor or you were being mentored by someone during this time.
Yeah. So there's been key people, like I said, throughout my life, generally I've been kind of like since early age, like living on my own, just like I watch out for myself. I get things done whichever way it has to happen. But I think one of the key things I learned in my like professional career is there's always someone that knows more than you do, And the minute I started opening myself up and allowing these people to speak into my life, I just saw this tremendous tremendous growth in my professional career. So, for example, at Long Beach Rescue Mission, it was my boss. Her name was Marisol. She was the director of development and fundraising, and she was just a person that allowed me to risk, like jump into these areas that we weren't doing currently. I had no prior experience doing, but she allowed me to take that risk, and also gently called me out when I made mistakes. Which is, I think, important to be able to receive that criticism and grow from it, learn from it. Failure, should be a good thing because now not what to do.
I want to touch on something that you mentioned, and please feel free to chime in. Something that puts those who are at an organization, whether that's a church or a nonprofit, are kind of have this advantage that they can start, especially in graphic design, that they can start doing their craft or getting better at it, as opposed to just learning theory and not actually applying it. I think it's so funny that you said that you saw a need. In other words, you thought what they had sucked. And and it's
Yes.
gotten a lot of us in trouble, especially in churches where we see something we're like, man, I could do better, or we can do better as an organization. And we kind of step in and we get better when we see that need.
Yeah.
So would you say that that in a way, school and learning is for sure really good,
Yeah.
but like being in a position where you have to learn specifics, almost like you have to be like, okay, this for some reason, I don't know, typography just doesn't look good. So then you start going into typography, as opposed where school just gives you all this breadth of knowledge. And it's kind of like when you pick up a program, right? I know Andrew's learning. What are you learning? Illustrator.
Gosh, I'm learning Illustrator, Premiere. It's just Word.
Like
Word.
like it's better to learn
Yeah.
how to do something specific with a program, as opposed to saying, oh, I'm going to learn everything there is about Premiere, because you probably are only going to use like 20% of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that.
No, I think what you were trying to ultimately, let me see if I can kind of put it into a question here, is the way you've kind of stumbled into this is essentially sounds like you have been like, this doesn't look good. We need to do better. And that sometimes gets you in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when you were young, it's not.
Yeah.
Like, were you like an artist, like as a young kid growing up
I
up to
think-
this point?
Honestly, I think it was just the only I think artistic thing about me as a young kid was probably just music. Just early on, just loving music. Playing piano and guitar. But to be honest, there was not, I think, a lot of there. Okay, let me back up a little. I think there was that creativity in me. I think it's been there. I just don't think in the circumstances that I grew up in was allowed to develop. Like there was never any avenue for me to express that. There were certain things that were expected of me, and certain just situations where it's like, honestly, I'm just trying to find a way to like eat today, and so I'm not worried about drawing or anything. And in a way, it was just I think not allowed to develop. Which is for me as a dad now, it's super important that I'm in tune with like my kids and like what do they like, what are they good at, and like just let them like grow in that, as opposed to push them and be like, yeah, school's important, because as much as I think school's important, I don't think that's the path that everybody should take,
I agree.
Yeah.
So, and I actually think, would you agree with this? Is that I think that we shouldn't maybe go right out of high school. It's like, who knows what to do with their life at
Yeah.
18? Some do,
Some do, some don't.
But
I definitely didn't.
I would feel like, hey, like take some time off, like go into the world, get some experience, see what you like,
Yeah.
and then be like, wow, I actually want to do this for
Yeah.
a living. I'm gonna go, get a degree in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the flaws, I think, in our education system is that we try to force young people to decide really quickly what they want to do and that they have to stick with it and work 40 years to get to the top, whereas honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to do at 18, man. Like
I don't think any
I
of
had
us
signed up for the Marines. you know, I was medically discharged, but if not, like I would have gone like that route.
Oh.
It's crazy, but I didn't know what I wanted to do, man. I signed up for all sorts of things.
That's how we get philosophy majors.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Sociology majors.
No, but I think it's very true, because back in the day, like if you wanted to be a writer for like the LA Times, you know, the New York Post, right? Like
Major in journalism.
you would major in journalism, but also you could essentially be like, hey, I want to start writing, or I want to be a writer for you. Can I intern? Can I do this?
Yeah.
I'll pay you to teach me your craft.
Yeah.
And then I'll get really good at it. And then I can go and find a job elsewhere. Like you build your portfolio essentially.
Almost
right?
in other words, like competition was not as wild as it is today.
It is. I feel like for every job now, there's just people that are, you know, like gunning for it. And like I look at, you know, jobs I've applied for and I see the competition I have, and it's people that are talented, man. It's
So
not
many
even like you're going up
talented, yeah.
against like nobody's. It's like people that could do that job just as good, or in many cases maybe better, you know, than you. But you know, you're praying that, you know, it's God's will you get that job, and that they see something in you, you know. So I think it's come down to more than just skills now, when it comes to like job searches, for sure.
That's like
what
the
I found.
whole person, right? Like,
Yeah,
like, are you cool? Like, can we work together?
Yeah, a lot of companies today would say like, hey, I want someone who we mesh with. You know, that's very important in a job force. I think. I mean, I currently work for a startup, and I mean, it was very much like that, or it is very much like that. Like, I understand you have the skill set, which is why you're here and we're interviewing you. But we're really interviewing you to see your persona, how you carry yourself. Are you a culture fit?
Are you a weirdo?
And hey, some companies are looking for weirdos.
Yeah,
that is
and
true,
sometimes some of the most creative people are the weirdos.
Like, are you a Googler, or what are they called?
No, I mean, it's you know, in my career, I've had to adapt really how I go about job searches. It used to be before, you know, like you said, you kind of talk to somebody, or you apply and they come in, they bring you in for an interview. But now it's like so cutthroat that, you know, one of the things that I think is actually hurting companies, but they do this quite often, is require like a degree for a position, you know,
just to even get considered.
even get considered. So I, you know, early on, a lot of my applications were getting thrown out because I have no major, you know, no degree. And so I had to start thinking kind of outside the box, like what can I do to be noticed, you know? And actually, like one of the jobs I applied for, I got it. I had been there like 3 years, and just casually one day I was talking to the HR person. And I was like, "What made you choose, you know, like me, like over other candidates that had degrees?" And she goes, "You don't have a degree?" And I was like, "No, I don't." She's like, "How did we hire you?" You know, but it was because, like, you know, I changed the layout on my resume. I did certain things, you know. I made
you have a portfolio?
Unofficially, yes. Nothing official out there, but I do have, like, you know, on my hard drive, I have a portfolio of things I've done. But you know, with my resume, it was like one of those things that I had to change up so that you look at it and immediately, like, it grabs your attention, whether you like it or not. You know, design, the power of design.
Yeah, the power of design is true.
And it's like, as soon as you do that, it stands out, and there's like, okay, maybe I want to know a little bit more about this person, you know, and just highlighting your strengths, highlighting everything you've done, even if you think it's inconsequential. I always tell people, like, you know, those volunteer hours where you went with your family to serve meals, like put it down, man. That's experience, you know, that's real life experience. And so.
Yeah. And for those looking for a job out there, pro tip, just as a heads up, when you're making your resume, make sure you send it in a PDF format versus like a Word doc format.
Not a JPEG?
Or, no, not a JPEG. PDF. I've talked to a lot of recruiters, and they're like, it's a Word document. When they open it up, who knows what order it's going to be. And if it's not nice, they're just going to throw it away.
Or if they don't have your fonts, it'll just all
change.
Yeah.
So PDF, pro tip, take that.
Pro tip. I forgot what I was going to ask.
No, well, I wanted to kind of touch base on this, well, which is your faith, right?
Yeah.
Because you are a believer.
I am.
But one thing I do want to kind of touch on is how has that influenced your work, right? Because
Yeah.
essentially, like, the way I like to think about it is whatever you're filled with, you just happen to pour out. Like, if I grew up in a family where it's like everyone loves each other, I just happen to be a more loving person. And I've known you for a long time, so I know faith is a big part of your life, and I'm sure that influences some of your work from time
Oh
to
yeah.
time.
I mean, I will say right now, I'd like to think that influences everything I do. Okay, everything. It permeates every part of my life and every decision I make. Realistically, I know it hasn't been like that, um, for the entirety of my career, my life. But it's one of those things that I feel like I'm growing in, and really just called to excel in what I do and use the gifts that I feel Jesus has given me to help others, to bless others, to do the best that I can do to my abilities. I think every person in this planet is gifted with certain gifts and abilities. It's cliche, like we're all unique, but it's so true. Like, yeah, we're made in God's image, but we all do have very unique gifts. you know some people it's creative, design. Some people it's people persons. Some people have amazing like minds to like organize projects like I've never seen. Like I could not do that
Yeah, there's
even with software.
Yeah, even with software. Yeah, no. My personal opinion is that everyone is creative. Everyone's a creative because God is a creator.
Yeah.
Right. So we all have that entity of who God is. Obviously, some people are more creative in different areas. Right. And like you said, like some people can organize things.
Yeah.
And that's
creative.
That's
in
creative
itself.
in itself.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I get overwhelmed. I'm like, yo, I can't do this. Give it to someone else. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it's about finding, like what you're passionate about, what you're good at, and allow people around you to also like speak into that. Because I think sometimes we can. I do think society now has made us very self-conscious, of how we look, of what we do, of what we say, and so a lot of times we can doubt ourselves. Like, I've seen some brilliant designers out there, like in some churches I've been at, who just don't like believe enough in themselves, and when you push them, like, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you, like, do it. And they come out with something that like I will never be able to match as a designer, because they have this just amazing gift to be able to put this together. But honestly, I think it's that confidence, that self-confidence, and letting people speak into you and saying like, I see this gift in you. I see this skill in you. Like, you should like develop that, and when people have that confidence to step into that, like amazing things can happen.
What did you do to get better at designing?
Design.
Yeah.
No, that's the answer. Design.
Oh.
No. Yeah, honestly, I think it was practical work. Like, just start. Like, I remember the first time. So I started, and I have no shame in this, but I started designing in like Word and Paint, back in the day, when it was too expensive to buy.
It was really
Adobe.
expensive,
It was super
right?
expensive.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I remember Adobe being so expensive.
It was dumb.
It was so expensive. So, hey, man, Word and Microsoft, what was it? Publisher, man.
Publisher, yeah.
Publisher was a big one for me. But, dang, I don't even remember where I was going with this.
You designed.
Oh, yeah.
You just continued to do it, right?
Yeah. And so I think a lot of it was just jumping in and like trying it, man. Working through the problem, I think, and almost like reverse engineering. And obviously, if you're not going to school and you're not learning like the theory and the actual like how to do things, like I would recommend people just like especially now with YouTube, man. And there's so many resources out there. Just like Google it, like reverse engineer things. See how like you said, I'm not going to learn everything Photoshop does, but maybe I'm interested in a certain style, and so I look at artists that have that style. I find tutorials that work in this style, and I learn how to use, an element of Photoshop really, really well.
Yeah.
And then I move on, and then you learn little by little. I don't, I think it's a lifetime process. I think very few people, I think, have the capacity to like just like jump in and know everything at at one time.
It's almost overwhelming, right? You can almost like just quit. But you know what?
Yeah, you can
This
get
is too hard.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah. That's happened to me. There's times where I'm like, I'm going to learn this. And then I start and I'm like, this is too much.
Dude.
Download a freaking.
That happened with me with, what's that DAW that everybody uses?
Pro Tools?
No, everybody uses Pro Tools.
Yeah,
but
Pro Tools, Logic.
The Ableton, I tried learning and I was like, this is way too much. I was like, this looks like it was made in the 90s, dude. I was like, I'm over it.
No, but it's top of the line. But one thing that you did mention was obviously putting out a lot of work and just starting.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, just starting can be very, very intimidating.
Yeah.
Right? Because we live in a time where everyone seems to be criticizing work. Like everyone is an expert in the field, right? And the funny thing is a lot of times I always tell people like, hey, just put your work out there. Just put your work out there. But what would you say to those guys or those youngsters or those people that are just trying to just put their work out there? Like, what would you tell them to not get discouraged in this era?
I think it's kind of like a double-edged sword, or like, like two sides of a coin where my encouragement is, you got to put your work out there. You got to start somewhere. But at the same time, I think being willing to listen to criticism of your work, I think one of my biggest, I think, strengths, what I think would be in my design is listening to the client. Right now, it's like ultimately, I would love to design it a certain way, and I think it looks better this way, but that's not what the client is asking, And so listening to, I think there's, at least in my field, like design is it's almost like a science, whereas there's also like a creative, like kind of like more artistic design, So I work more in like the structured design, and
you're more in like
advertisement,
right.
Direct mail fundraising. So there's a certain way you go about things, but being willing to, I think, just open yourself up to criticism and be able to receive that, and then just kind of like, at least in my case, prayerfully, just like sift through it. Not every criticism you get is going to be valid, but at the same time, not you got to make sure that you are listening to people and listening, especially from people that know what they're doing. It's like, okay. And then go one step further, like those people that come in here and say like, oh man, that just doesn't look good. And they know what they're saying or doing. It's like, ask them why, what can I do to make it better? How can I improve? As opposed to letting your ego take over. It's like try to use every moment you have to learn, to grow, even if it's personally painful, like to your ego. You'll find that you grow a lot more when you can suppress that.
For you, is there a difference between designing for a nonprofit, for a business, and for a church?
Oh, tremendously. Like I said, in the nonprofit world, how I design now, it's almost a science. There's a certain element to how you design, for example, an appeal letter. You're appealing to donors to fundraise money for a problem, for an issue, for a cause. One of the things that I do now is it's very data driven design. When people read a fundraising letter, we now use like heat map studies where there's certain areas of the paper that they're drawn to, certain styles of design they're drawn to, certain colors they're drawn to. And so we try to stick within those parameters for the most part when we are designing. So a lot of people will even come like, oh man, it looks so simple, like that I don't understand. Like we could make it so much more prettier, but it's like, I think one of the things I've grown in is that sometimes less is more, and understanding like, what, data's driving this design. Like if more people are going to give to an ugly design than a pretty one, I'm going to go with the ugly one.
I'm gonna take the money
because the goal is fundraising here. It's not to
look pretty.
It's not to look pretty, But then you have other opportunities, like in I worked at a church, and some of these we want to like attract people visually, and so you can be much more creative in your designs. With businesses too, there's I think a balance where you want to keep on brand. You don't want to like impose yourself. And I think that's a big tip I'm going to give people out there that are trying to design like logos or websites or anything for companies is while you do want to like offer your style to them, you don't want it to be your logo for them. You want it to be something that they can buy into, that's on brand for them, and that sometimes means toning it down, like not going super modern because the whole of their company hasn't caught up with that yet. And so you want to make sure that their logo's on brand, that their designs are on brand, and look like they belong.
Yeah, branding is huge. Branding is huge for everything. I think everything is branding. Like the way you carry yourself, even as a persona, like even the way you carry yourself is branding in itself. Talk a little bit about, just like you said, church. You worked for a church there. How was that experience for you?
It was definitely an interesting experience, I will say.
Yeah.
It was not at all what I expected working at a church, unfortunately. I do tell people that ask that, that was for me one of the most difficult seasons in my professional career. Because, a church is somewhere where you're trying to like mesh like faith with your professional career, like, like design and things. And so, it definitely, my time at the church I was working at, was not as, I think, productive as I would have liked. And definitely, not an experience that I would have, wanted for myself. But looking back, there's so many things I learned, while I was there that I can't just discount that experience, And I think that's kind of going back to what I said, like try to find a growing opportunity, a learning opportunity in everything. Even if somebody says it's a failure, it's, if somebody deems it a failure, like, you know what, like, no, go back to that and say, what did I learn from this experience? Even if it's to like, like shut my mouth or, or like, like tone back or like whatever it is. Like, and I think for me, one of the big key things I learned there was, I think learning to work with people even when you don't like necessarily agree with them, or when you know that maybe it's not best practices. And so it was a lot of like submission, which is man, that's one of my struggles. It's like my pride.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, pride is one of my big issues. And so being able to submit to somebody when you know they're wrong and it was proven afterwards, it's a hard thing, but I think I've grown so much out of it, and it's given me so much more empathy for people that like work under me now, where it's like, well, I don't want to be that, I want to give people that work for me an opportunity to express their creativeness and not feel like they have to like tiptoe around me, like I want them to be able to critique what we're doing as a team, honestly, because the best ideas sometimes come from the bottom, so many times, just people that are growing and just their minds haven't been like so filtered through like all these different lenses, in life, and just have fresh creative new ideas.
And I want to touch a little bit about what you said there, which was submitting to like leadership or to people that are making decisions. I think that's very huge, because that says a lot about your character.
Yeah.
What would you say are some characteristics that would help people to kind of join in that or better their career? Because, I don't want to say this, but you can't essentially be a non-people person.
Yeah.
Right. Or you can essentially be someone that is just looking for, I'm here for myself and that's it. Because it's design or just a lot of things it's a team effort. Like,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would you say are other characteristics that you would look for, like if you were to be hiring someone today in that?
Honestly, one of the big things for me, and this is just probably because of my own experiences, is that ability to learn, ability to take something and not be offended when it's like criticized. So again, I think it's going back to, is this person flexible enough that, that I can come and say, hey, this design really sucked. It didn't meet the criteria that the client had. How can we make it better? And somebody that's like, yeah, okay, boom, let's move forward. Let's or even like asking like, yeah, like what wasn't about it that it didn't meet the client's criteria. And so I'm really looking for that flexibility, I think, to grow as a person, grow as a designer, whatever you're doing, just like allow people to criticize and take what you can from it and grow.
I think that's the best way to learn, because a church actually turned me down because they pretty much said my designs sucked. And they were right. It was like a time where I wasn't even interested that much in design. It was a thing I did for the church because it was a need, right?
Yeah.
But that really forced me to take design seriously and learn it as, like you said, a science. And what's interesting is now I do their designs, and I think what separates those who succeed in what they want to do, especially in art, is the ability to take criticism. So I completely agree with what you said.
Yeah, and grow from it. Like you said, you're now in a position where your designs are much better than they were there.
You ever compared yours? Do you still have yours from back then?
I do.
My
and
goodness, what an embarrassment!
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, everyone's first work is not the greatest,
Man.
but you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, if I hadn't picked up, publisher, Word, whatever, to start designing, I'd, probably be somewhere else in my life. And obviously, like, I think, like, still growing, but it's like, I really had to make an effort to go out and like do something about it, as opposed to like waiting for it to come to me.
Yeah. And Mario, right now you're working for a creative agency, right? And your line of work, a lot of people wouldn't consider it an art, right? Like you're essentially fundraising, and people are like, oh, that's not an art. But I think there's a lot of components that come into what you do that I would like you to kind of just share a little bit about it and how you can link that to an art form.
Yeah. I mean, in a way it's an art form, I think, because there's no 100% like assured way that, people are going to like donate to a charity, So when we work with clients, a lot of it is experimenting, with design, with how we write, and it's really trying to find like the voice of the organization, without compromising on some of the things we know work, So there is an art form there to try to find that balance between like the data driven side of it, the design and the more creative element. So, for example, we have like, I spoke earlier about like appeals. And so that's very data driven. But one of the things we've done now is like, when we report back to the donor about what, the amazing things their dollar has done for people, it's like we get more creative, we include those images, we do a little bit more design heavy stuff, and try to just showcase it, like let the design kind of speak for what we're trying to write, and I think that's super important too. And what we do is, if I'm asking you for money for a need, and I put the picture of this like happy smiling kid, like it doesn't connect,
You got to get the stock photo of the starving child, right?
Stock photo, but no, and not even that. It's about like, we try to not go stock photo. We try to show like actual needs, like, there's families out there that, with their permission, because I think also there's an ethical part of fundraising too. Like, you don't want to exploit people for the sake of raising money for a cause, And so we want to make sure that we're doing this ethically, but we're allowing people that do have a need to share. It's like, would you be willing to share your story with us? Would you be willing to allow us to use your photo to ask people to help and step up and eliminate this issue or help this cause, And so a lot of this, trying to get that, match that up, And so that's an art form, trying to find, things that work well together.
In other words, you're trying to ask for people's contributions in a creative way.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. You never, I think, want it to be just you on paper. I think we spoke earlier about it being like a team contribution. Like, it's much more powerful. Like a story, for example, like I've had experience, like interviewing people, on camera for their testimonies or their stories of need or whatnot. And I will never be able to tell their story more powerfully than they can. Or than you can. I will never be able to tell somebody else's story more powerfully than they can, because they've lived it, there's emotion there when they're thinking about these tough times, like, they're flashing back, and they're thinking of like, man, like I remember I was struggling through this and through that, and same with me. Nobody's going to be able to tell my story with the passion, and the fervor that I tell my story, because I've lived it. Nobody else has.
Well, they say the best way to preach the gospel is to tell your story.
Yeah, that's the best way. It's, it's like share what God's done in your life, how you've seen his hand work in your life. And then let the Holy Spirit convict.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for that. I mean, Jesus told his parables, which are stories.
Yeah.
And I think stories are is always going to win, right? I mean, as a cinematographer, I look at stuff and I'm like, that was such a good story.
Yeah.
And it just like, have you ever watched a movie where you're just like, it makes you cry?
All the time.
All
bro.
the time.
Yeah. All the time.
Finding Nemo.
Coco.
We just watched Coco this weekend. I was bawling like a baby.
Yeah.
But it's great.
No, but it's
story.
Great. It's great storytelling. We actually just, for my agency, we just wrapped up a conference a couple weeks ago called the Storytelling Conference.
Oh, wow.
Happens every year. I recommend you guys look it up. Essentially, what we try to do is bring in professionals across our industry to show people in nonprofits how to best tell their story. Because a lot of times you'll get that generic letter like please help us now, and it feels so dry. It like even the story there just feels like very generic, those stock images. And so what we want to do through this conference is to encourage nonprofits to find the best way to tell their story. And a lot of it is like, it includes its design, includes video, includes like how do you best tell your story, how you best ethically tell your story, and what components go into creating that value in enough that people will want to donate to your charity.
Yeah, I think story is great. I do want to touch a little bit on just we're going through difficult times as not just as a nation, but I think as the whole world. There's a global pandemic happening. How much has COVID-19 affected your work or your just in general, just the way life is?
Man, if I'm honest, not much. I think I was blessed to be working remotely already when all this happened. And so there wasn't much of a transition for me. And I think my big key takeaway from all this, I think, has just been seeing God's hand of blessing in the life of me and my family and in my career. Because I actually made this jump to this agency, and it was kind of like a leap of faith. It was like taking a little bit less money, and there was some positives, some negatives, and I wasn't sure. And I just felt the Holy Spirit just saying like, take the leap, take the leap. Talked with my wife. She felt it confirmed. We did it. And then like, boom, all this happens. And it's like, I'm 100% remote. I can live anywhere I want. It's actually spurring a move next year from Los Angeles out to Houston, hopefully.
Oh, you're going to be part of the Exodus.
Another one.
Exodus. And it's changing, the lifestyle for my children, and it's being able to provide that for them. But this job has allowed that. And we've seen really, I think, God's hand of blessing when we submit to that. And that's part of like, I had to learn how to submit to Jesus too, but when we've submitted to him, he's just amazing, like what he's done in my life. And one of the things I think, been praying for through this time is empathy. And I'm going to encourage everybody out there, whether you're creative, think you're creative or not, designer, whatever it is. Empathy is probably one of those biggest tools to help you grow professionally. And not necessarily, I think, because of how it directly impacts you, but how you impact others. I think part of our calling, I think, is even in design, you want to like move people. You want to do something for people. So I think professionally too, we have to like see how is our growth also benefiting those around us. You know, I think we have to think more like that. Like, who can I bring up with me? Who can I mentor? You know, because I was mentored. I was brought up by somebody. And so it's like, who can I pull along with me? And not lose my mind, you know, at the same time. But just been praying for empathy for people that, you know, COVID-19 has hit a lot of people hard. You know, there's been deaths. There's been a lot of job loss, a lot of small businesses that have gone out of business, large businesses that have gone out of business. And so, you know, COVID-19 has impacted so many people in such a catastrophic way. And so in my blessing, like I've just been praying, like, Lord, just like give me empathy towards those that have struggled with this, that are in a place where it's not the best season of their life, you know? And like, how can I come alongside people and just love them like you love me, you know?
Yeah, that's really good. I would like to kind of just also say the fact that you mentioned this was I was mentored and someone helped me bring me up, right? Someone gave me the hand. I think a sign of a good leader is someone who does that. Like it's I've seen memes where it's like the difference between a boss and a leader. The boss is like where's this work, blah blah blah, and it's just kind of when it's time to like take credit, like, oh, I did it all. A leader is like, oh no, this all them. Like this is all them.
I have a boss.
I'm fortunate to have a leader, man. I gotta
awesome.
tell you, like that's another bonus of where I'm at right now. It's a man of God. We're not a Christian organization, but he's a man of God. That's just the guy has over 30 years of fundraising experience, and yet he has the humility and the humbleness to, you know, ask my opinion when he's working on things. And say like, you know, Mario, what do you think? You know, like, and recognizing that I have, you know, stronger design skills. So he asked, you know, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? I think full well knowing he could probably do a better job than I can, you know, but I think that's how he's built such a strong team is, you know, like knowing that it's not about him and pulling others and mentoring others and being willing, you know, I've asked him some stupid questions, but, you know, I've gotten so much out of his answers, you know, and just grown so much from that.
Yeah.
So Mario, where you're at in life right now, how much of that would you say is because of your talent and your hard work and dedication, and how much of that has to do with God's blessing, him opening doors and just giving you favor in your life?
So I would say 100% God's blessing with a caveat. So I feel like every opportunity I've had, like major jump, either like promotion wise or career wise, or just like skills that kind of like presented themselves for me to learn, I have been when I kind of least expected them. When I was working the hardest to get, you know, jobs at places, you know, like they never came to fruition. And it's like when I let my guard down and I just kind of been like, Lord, just, I don't know what to do now. Like, you know, you lead. And it's like, boom, job offer, you know, boom, promotion. And it's like to the point where it's like, it's seriously not even funny. Like I can't take credit.
Right?
Like I can't even like take credit
you.
for it. It's like he's like, God has a sense of humor, you know, like where it's like, you can't take credit for that because that came when you least expected it. You didn't even apply for that job, you know? And it's just been incredible to see that. But I think along the way, it's recognizing like that I've stewarded and grown the skills he's given me. Because if I hadn't, that opportunity would not have presented itself. You know, so God says, look, Mario, I'm going to give you some design skills. I'm going to give you some writing skills. You need to nurture that, just like the parable, you know, like grow those talents. And I have done that, you know, and like I've worked at that and with his blessing, just been able to be successful at that. And then I get to a point where he's like, okay, now that you've nurtured these talents I've given you, I'm going to bless you with something unexpected, you know? And almost, I see it almost as like his favor on my life for submitting to what he has for me. And being faithful with what he's given me, you know? And when I have, it's like, boom, So it's kind of like one of those answers where it's like 100% God, but I've also had to nurture and steward those gifts that he's given me for him to operate in my life, you know?
Yeah.
So
That's good. That's good, man. Mario, thank you so much for your story. We really, really appreciate your time. One of the things that I want people to know is where they can actually find your stuff. Like, where can people find you?
that's hard, man, because my website is still sitting, my domain name's still sitting there, and I haven't finished it. My Instagram, you look at it, I think the last post was like last year. I'm not a very like, it's interesting, as outgoing as I am, not a lot of like social stuff you can find with me. And I think a lot of it's just like, I do my work and I just like, the Lord's opened doors. And so I haven't found the need to like, like put myself out there like that, and just, that's part of God's blessing,
Yeah.
like I haven't had to do that. But I mean, if you guys want to contact this podcast or contact me directly, that, you can.
What is your Instagram?
Yeah.
I gotta look it up, man. That's how bad it is.
That was good. That was good.
Like,
I mean, we'll have it on the
they'll have
on the
it
bottom,
on there.
but
Just for me now. So it's Mr. _ MG. So Mr. _ EMGEE.
There you go.
You guys can follow me, but don't expect much.
That's good, man. But thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And we enjoyed hearing your story and what God is doing. And we just want to say we are excited for the future that God has in store for you and also for your career.
Yeah. And likewise, man, like I said earlier, in, at the opening, I'm super excited about this podcast. Just even on a personal, like Andrew, like he said, we've known each other so long, and just seeing his growth from that little like chubby kid I once knew that could barely play the guitar.
Oh, you met him when he was chubby.
Yeah,
oh,
I
nice.
did, man. I did. But like, like, and just seeing his, like, I think one of the things that excited me about Andrew is his eagerness to learn and grow. Like, I can't remember one time when I felt like he was just like, nah, man, I'm good. Like, he knows so much more about music now than I do, but I feel like even now he's still like willing to learn and grow. And I always see him asking people like, how did you do that? What do you think of this? What do you think of that? So, man, just like personally, I want to encourage you and just let you know that I see that. I see that in this. And I think you guys are going to do great things with this podcast. And I'm just excited to have been a part of it.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.